y'all, welcome back to my kitchen. You may remember my food philosophy from last time, but in case you don't, here's a little refresher. I really like eating healthy, but I don't believe healthy means sacrificing flavor. So last time I walked y'all through one of my go-to meals, honey mustard ginger glazed salmon with roasted Brussels sprouts and turmeric sweet potato wedges. In case you missed that one, click here to check it out. Today we're gonna do things a little differently. Last time I promised you something decadent, so today I'm gonna show you how to make my very popular chocolate chip cookies. If you ask anyone who's tried these chocolate chip cookies, they'll tell you they are the best around. There are two reasons that these cookies are so awesome. The first is the ingredients. I always use the highest quality ingredients because a recipe is only as good as what you put into it. So I'm always happy to spend a little bit of extra money to make sure that my creations get the finest ingredients possible. The second is the texture. In my less than humble opinion, a good chocolate chip cookie should be crispy around the edges and on the bottom, but chewy in the center. The way to do this, and there's science behind this that involves letting the gluten relax and yada yada. Anyway, what you have to do is you have to put the dough in the fridge and leave it there for 24 hours. Yes, it's a challenge. Normally when we bake, the first step would be to preheat the oven. However, since the dough is gonna spend the next 24 hours in the fridge, preheating the oven might be a little premature right now. So we're gonna go ahead and start with our dry ingredients. The first thing we wanna do is measure and sift our dry ingredients. In addition to spending time in the fridge, one of the other things that makes the texture of these cookies so great is the combination of two different kinds of flour. So the first flour we use is cake flour. You wanna do 2 cups minus 2 tablespoons. And that's it for the cake flour. Now for the bread flour. This one gets 1 2/3 cups. Next up is the baking powder. That one is going to be 1.25 teaspoons. And then we do 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. Yes, it's different from baking powder. Yes, the distinction is very important. No, I don't know scientifically why. And the last of the dry ingredients is 1.5 teaspoons of coarse salt, but as you may have guessed, that won't fit through the sifter, so we'll just pop that in after we finish getting these through. So you just wanna, with a whisk, go ahead and mix them together as you get them through the sifter. If they don't mix super well when you're sifting them, that's fine. You can mix them up after as well. And yes, it's kind of a pain, but it's totally worth it because it keeps all the lumps out of your cookies. The only lumps you want are chocolate, I promise. All right, so now that that's done, you just want to grab 1.5 teaspoons of coarse salt. So obviously a little sprinkle is getting in there, but we'll compensate by not filling it completely. Teaspoon and 1/2. Yes, I'm making a mess, always. That's baking. All right, the dry ingredients are ready to go. The next step is to cream together the butter and sugar. We need 2.5 sticks of butter, which I know sounds like a ton, and it is, but this recipe makes a lot of cookies, so it's okay. So you just wanna put the butter in here. One thing recipes often don't tell you is that you always wanna use unsalted butter when you're baking. It's very important, otherwise your stuff will turn out too salty. And it's also very helpful if you have a chance to leave the butter sitting out on the counter for a couple hours before you start. That way it's soft and mixes easily in with the rest of your ingredients. And in we go. All right, so with the butter, you wanna do 1.25 cups of brown sugar. With brown sugar, it's always important to pack it really tight. You can use light or dark brown sugar. I prefer dark brown because it gives the cookies that chewiness. So that's 1.25. And those 2 tablespoons of flour we lost, we're making up for it with sugar. Good substitution, right? So that's 1 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar. Now we also have 1 cup of white sugar. And then close your mixer, lock it in place, and let it go. Start the mixer on a pretty low speed, let everything start to get going, and then once all of your ingredients get to a point where they're kind of mixed and not gonna fly everywhere, then you can crank it up and let it go on high for 3 to 5 minutes until everything is nice and fluffy. Once the butter and sugar are light and fluffy, go ahead and stop your mixer. Pop it open. I'm gonna scrape everything down so we don't lose ingredients. Okay. And now we want to crack 1 egg into the bowl. Close your mixer and once that one's mixed in, you get to do it again with egg number 2. All right, once that one's mixed in, you guessed it, we're gonna scrape down the sides of the bowl again. And we are going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now, you probably are familiar with vanilla extract. I don't like it. This is vanilla bean paste, and it's 1,000 times better than vanilla extract. Extract is alcohol. It smells really good, it adds a nice vanilla scent to everything, but if you taste it, it's actually really bitter. I know this because when I was younger and baking with my mom, she actually told me to taste the vanilla. Disgusting. I will never forget. So vanilla paste is actually exactly what it sounds like. It's a paste of ground up vanilla beans. So you get a lot more of that real vanilla flavor. Yeah, it's a little more expensive, but like I said, totally worth it because it's actually delicious. All right, that one only takes a couple of seconds. Now we add in the dry ingredients. With the dry ingredients, it's really important not to just pour them all in. Again, learn that lesson the hard way. You will end up with a kitchen covered in flour. Trust me, don't do it. Smaller is better. Pop open your mixer. You want to do the dry ingredients about a cup at a time. So just go ahead and pour that in there. Once again, we're going to start the mixer really slow to let the flour mix in so it doesn't all over the kitchen. As you can see, the dough's like doubled in size, which is great because, you know, more dough, more cookies, or just more dough. All right. The end of those dry ingredients in there. Shut it down and you don't want to mix it on high for too long because that's when the gluten starts to all toughen up in the flour and that makes for crunchy cookies. But you do want to give it one go just to make sure everything's nice and incorporated. Now that everything's mixed together, we're going to get to the most important part of chocolate chip cookies, the chocolate chips. You can use as many or as few chocolate chips as you like. It really just depends on how chocolatey you like your cookies. I typically use about 1.5 cups, but you know, it's a very rough estimate. I do, however, always use 3 kinds of chocolate. I've got my See's chocolate chips. If you've had See's candies, you know that their chocolate is amazing. So this is my favorite. So I always like to do a nice healthy dose of these. Then we've got the dark chocolate chips. Ghirardelli is my go-to, but any brand of dark chocolate, always a good call. And the minis, just so they're nice, evenly distributed throughout the cookies. You got a little bit of chocolate in every bite. And by a little bit, I kind of mean a ton. All right, now, if you're super patient and really strong, you can mix those in by hand, folding them with a spatula. I'm a little lazier, not gonna lie, and I don't actually care if the chips get a little broken, so I just use my mixer for that. Now that the chocolate chips are in, everything looks pretty good in there. I'd say that's probably enough chips. Now what you want to do, get as much dough as possible off of the mixer paddle just so it doesn't fall. Then you just want to detach your bowl from your mixer. Sometimes it takes a little more work. And just scoop it on in to your container. As you're scooping it, you probably want to go ahead and just taste test a little bit of the dough just to make sure the cookies are good to serve. You know how it is. I think this batch will be fun. Once most of that's in there, and again, you know, if there's a little left in the bowl, so you have to lick it clean. Things happen. Once that's all nice and in there, you just want to go ahead and cover it with saran wrap. Press the saran wrap down so that it seals the dough in. You don't want the dough to get any air exposure because that will dry it out. So it's going to look like that once it's done. And then you pop the lid on it and put it in the fridge. Don't open it. Because this is a cooking show and I don't expect y'all to wait around 24 hours while the dough refrigerates, I went ahead and made a batch of dough yesterday so that it could spend all night in the fridge and be ready to go today to show y'all how it's done. Go ahead and preheat your oven to 375. And then you want to line a cookie sheet with parchment paper. Again, lining your cookie sheets makes cleanup so much easier. What we want to do is, using a cookie scoop, just want to scoop out balls of dough and pack it in there, so it's like that. Pop the dough ball out and put it round side down on the pan. Now, you could do this with a spoon. The cookie scoop just makes it a little easier. If you happen to be wondering what the difference is between a cookie scoop and an ice cream scoop, it's this nifty little swinging device inside the cookie scoop that pushes the dough out and makes it easy to put onto the pan. Once you've got all of your dough balls nicely laid out on your cookie sheet, grab some coarse salt and you just want to sprinkle it across the top of the cookies. This gives it that nice, sweet, salty combination that makes these cookies killer. A little extra salt for good measure, and these guys are ready to go into the oven. While that first batch spends the next 8 minutes in the oven turning into delicious cookies, we're gonna do something a little different for the second batch. You're gonna scoop out a ball of dough, but instead of going straight onto the cookie sheet, scoop it into your hand, break it in half, and then just flatten each half in your hand. You guys may have tried these, maybe not. I'm mildly obsessed with Trader Joe's dark chocolate covered pretzel slims. These things are like crack. One of my students and I bonded over this fact and many, many, many bags of pretzels a while back. So for her birthday this year, she asked me to do something inspired by the pretzel slims. Being the crazy gal I am, I thought, why not put them in the cookies? I didn't want to break them up and use them like chocolate chips, so what I did instead is I broke them into pieces, like halves, and stuffed them inside the cookie. Crazy, but so freaking delicious. Again, we want to sprinkle these guys with a little bit of sea salt. My hands are so doughy right now, the salt's sticking more to me than it is to the cookies, but we'll get there. All right. At this point, just like the first batch, these guys go in the oven for 8 minutes or until the edges are nice and brown and crispy looking and the middle looks slightly undercooked. And that first batch should be about done by now. You just want to go ahead and leave the cookies sitting on their cookie sheet for a couple of minutes just to let them rest and solidify, and then you can go ahead and move them to a wire cooling rack to finish off. And there we go, that is hot. So you just want to let those rest for a couple minutes. Yes, they are amazing fresh out of the oven. Try not to eat them all that way, save a couple for everyone else. But otherwise, that's it. You have some freaking delicious cookies. Next episode, we're going back to a healthy meal, so enjoy the cookies now.